Hugely entertaining day of Test match cricket. It didn't matter at what rate the game was going in terms of runs per over. It was very watchable. It was a thrilling contest. It saw India's bowlers get into the game, and it sees them end the second day's play at the Adelaide Oval of this first day night test ahead by 62 after they managed to restrict Australia to 191. How good is that 52-run lead, and what does day three hold in store for us? We'll discuss that on ESPN Cricket Info Matchday in the presence of Akash Chopra and Tom Moody. Would you take that, Akash? After 2 days play, if you told Virat Kohli you'll be 62 ahead?
Oh, 100%. Because when you're batting first, and I think we've discussed this earlier as well, that even if you were to concede a 25-30 run slender lead, you would still take that because you've not scored 350 plus in the first innings. So 244 was a below par score, a very moderate score. You started the day with losing 4 wickets for just 11 runs. So all your hopes of getting to 300 or going beyond were dashed in double quick time. So from there, if you were to now consider that you have a 60 plus run lead, you've lost only 1 wicket, 9 more wickets to actually in your bag, you'll definitely take it. Australia has to bat last. So whatever little slight advantage you were talking about at the end of yesterday's play, now just double it up and then put it in India's corner.
Now, would Australia, with their formidable record, Tom, in these day-night tests at the Adelaide Oval, what would you look back at this, how this day was for them? The lead is still 62. It could have been a lot more if India would have taken their chances. They've managed to keep it down to 62. But if you look back at day two, is this a disappointing day for Australia and their batting?
I think it's a very disappointing day. But I think you can't not applaud India's bowling. Their bowling was outstanding. We talked about, or certainly the point I made after day one was how relentless Australia was with the ball and how difficult it was for India to score and make inroads into a substantial total and get any sort of momentum. And the same thing happened today with the Indian attack. They were relentless with their pursuit of taking wickets and Ashwin's contribution was just gold, really, the way he bowled and produced the wickets he produced. So yes, there was a lot of flaws in the field, from India's perspective, but they're not alone. Australia seems to have caught on with that habit of dropping a few. So it's there's no doubt India are very much ahead in this contest, but they're not miles away. All it takes is, some good bowling from Australia, some good fielding, and it could be a very, very interesting fourth innings.
Yeah. Now, there'll be a lot of players that might come into the picture to impact this game over the next 2-3 days, maybe one day, we never know. But Prithvi Shaw won't be one of them. It's been a forgettable test match for the young opener. And Akash, in very quick time, he'll have time to reflect on 2 poor innings, a not so great moment in the field. Just let's talk about the dismissal itself and what Prithvi Shaw would be going through right now.
See, once again, the deficiency in the technique are coming to the fore. Or when you talk about the gap between bat and pad, the front foot doesn't go anywhere. He's invariably late on the ball. Of course, he's changed his technique a little bit. Earlier, when he actually made his international debut, his back leg was going towards square leg. That was, in my opinion, almost a death wish. If you are an opener, you can't be backing away. So he's addressed that by going back and across. But now he's going so deep inside the crease that the front foot, for a short stature of a guy that he is hardly moving. It's not even going for beyond that popping crease. So once again, if you're not going close to the ball, there is a gap between bat and pad. You are always vulnerable against the new ball. Confidence is rock bottom as well. So two insignificant innings, a drop catch. Of course, everything is now stacked against him. Let's see how he responds and how the team responds to it, because they did invest faith in him. So would they just lose after one bad test match, or they'll say, okay, since we invested in you, let's give you 2 more innings?
It's a good time to perhaps just go deeper into this aspect of Prithvi Shaw's technique as an international test opening batsman. And we often make comparisons because of the style of play to Virender Sehwag, Akash, with Prithvi Shaw. Nothing, not to put any extra pressure on Prithvi, but it's perhaps a good time to just focus and reinstate Sehwag's defensive game for leaving aside his attacking one overseas.
You have to. His bat came really straight, and his front foot was not an exaggerated front foot movement, but then he could keep his bat and pad close together and would happily leave a lot of stuff outside off. So his understanding of where the top stump was was still all right, and he didn't leave that much or that big a gap every single time that he played on the front foot, and therefore it just worked. To be fair, he did also get out. It's not that every time he walked out to play in England, South Africa, or Australia, he got truckloads of runs. There is a flip side to that technique. Make no mistake. Of course, that is perfect, or rather almost near perfect, when you're playing in the subcontinent where the ball moves not at all, not a zilch in the air or off the surface. New ball is the best time to bat. And you would find that his subcontinental numbers are miles ahead of his overseas numbers. And then New Zealand or South Africa, where the ball darts around a little more, you'll find his numbers actually plummet further. So there is a downfall. There is a shortfall. It's just that he scored whenever he got going. He just scored huge, and that takes care of the low scores that will eventually happen. And that's why you tend to ignore that one downside of that technique that Viru had. And having said that, let's also admit that everybody fails. So it's all about that percentage of failures and what you can do on your good day. And Viru was unstoppable on his day. He was a match winner.
I'd be delighted to know what the people that manage Prithvi Shaw would make of all this now. Because in two innings, yes, I'm all for one to say players should get a long run. And I think that's the general cricket going, right? You give people a nice long run to prove themselves. But in 2 innings, you're seeing that the Australian pace bowlers with the new ball wouldn't mind bowling to Prithvi Shaw. There is going to be now an extended conversation, not just of the confidence, but also of the technique in Australia. What would you make of it, and how would you manage him now?
Well, I think the technique was always in question leading into this test match. And if you had asked me 2 days ago or a week ago, how would you expect Prithvi Shaw to get dismissed, or what would the Australians look to do to try to attack him? I think we've just seen it in, I don't know how many balls he faced. Let's say a dozen balls for 2 dismissals. He has some serious technique issues that is set up for white ball cricket. His technique is set up for white ball cricket. Now, I'll sort of wind it back where his hands splay out away from his body. Now, he's not a big man in stature, so a lot of players that are searching for power will always lose their shape and their hands will go away from their body, so their bottom hand can allow them to, come through and give them the power that they're looking for. But what that does, it creates a real opening in your technique. So if there's any movement, you're left exposed both on the inside and the outside edge. With the hands going away from your body, your head also falls over off stump. So therefore, your balance is completely gone. So therefore, you can get the ball on the inside between bat and pad, and that's creating his problem. To me, his stride is not a massive issue. To me, his back lift is the number one issue. And because he's not tall in stature, what he needs to do is make sure is if he's only going to take a small stride, it's not like he's got long legs like Cameron Green. If he's only going to take a small stride, he's got to make sure that all his ball contact is underneath his nose. So he's hitting underneath himself. So someone like Kane Williamson, who's not a tall batsman either, he'll take not enormous strides, but what Kane does, and he's the master of it, he hits the ball underneath his nose. And at times, he nearly hits the ball behind himself. So Prithvi Shaw has to, I think, rediscover a way to play red ball cricket to tighten up this technique. Otherwise, he's going to be exposed, on a continual basis. White ball cricket, he can get away with it. Flatter wickets, white ball won't do as much, and his ball striking at times can be breathtaking. But certainly when it comes to red ball cricket, he seriously needs to address his technique. From a management's point of view, that conversation should have happened months, if not a year or years ago. Definitely has changed his back foot movement, because I remember watching him in the Under-19 World Cup in New Zealand. As the first thing I noticed was really unusual for a special talent. His back foot was going back to leg stump, and that was only against Under-19 bowlers. So it's not like he was concerned about pace. It was just a bad habit he'd got into.
Now, if I have to go ask you both a quick question on whether you'd give Prithvi one more test, because Akash did say that, now that you've picked him, give him at least 4 innings, or whether this is a problem, and add to that the low confidence that he carries into this game, And is that reason enough to make a change after one game, win or lose? Akash.
It is a tough one because when you talk about this is the first test match of the series, and you've gone with someone with whatever that confidence you had because you want to have some continuity with regards to your selection. You also want to have some amount of faith in your own eye for talent and your backing of that talent. But then extraordinary circumstances sometimes demand extraordinary decisions and just be rational at times. So I won't be surprised. See, however much I want Prithvi Shaw to actually have 4 innings, but sometimes when you are in close contact with a person and you see his confidence, you see him, see his body language, and if you see that it's not going to happen, no matter what you do, you actually read that guy because you're spending so much time with him. You say, okay, fine, that's it. We are going to make a change, even if it's going to be temporary. Let's not forget, Rohit Sharma will be available after a couple of test matches. Who do you open with in his absence for the Boxing Day test match is another question that you will have to answer at some stage. If you were to drop Prithvi Shaw after the first test failure, it is a tough one for the test for the team management as well. And Tom might have a different opinion or might actually agree with me that once you pick somebody in the first test match, 2 innings is too short, too small a sample size to now lose faith. Whatever was right or wrong with him, it cannot just suddenly change after two innings.
Okay, so then let's ask Tom that. There is also the case of putting out that perhaps batting at the MCG in a day test would be a little easier than batting in Adelaide in a day-night test. Putting all that in perspective, putting the fact that there's Shubman Gill waiting, there's KL Rahul as a potential reinstatement as an opener, how would you go, Tom?
Well, it's a very difficult one. The first point I'll make is that Prithvi Shaw is not the one that's failed here. The selectors have failed because he shouldn't have got picked to begin with, knowing that he's coming into this test series out of form and also with the technical flaws that have been exposed over a dozen balls. So to me, he was set up to fail in a way. To me, Shubman Gill should have been the person that played to begin with. His technique is a lot more watertight. And, he's shown that he's got wonderful temperament. And I'm not saying Prithvi Shaw's not going to make a good test cricketer. He's got a huge future in front of him. But at the moment, I think it's not so much his fault. I think the actual decision to play him was the wrong decision. Now, going back to your question, I don't think the selectors have any other choice but to back him for Melbourne, regardless of whether you think it's going to be more of a tame wicket or whatever the case may be. But you cannot go in with conviction and pick someone and then suddenly, on the back of 2 knocks, suddenly do a backflip and then withdraw him, particularly given what the circumstances are coming Test 3 and Test 4 with Rohit Sharma coming back into the side, because you're then having too much movement in that top order, which is, as Akash would know as a top order player, it's unsettling for everyone.
Just to quickly just for the record, to put it straight, Akash, you follow as much, if not more, Indian cricket in the news. But on tour, it's the captain and the coach that decide the final teams, right? Or is there still a selector involved?
Selector is not is there, and you take his inputs, but he does not decide the playing 11, and not at all. It has to be the captain's call along with the coach. But now, and the leadership group always is a part of that. You form a consensus somehow, but there is another dynamic that is going to change. Virat Kohli is not going to be there. It will be a different captain now for the second test match. So the next captain may have actually had different thoughts, and he may have actually voiced it in the first game itself that, I think Shubman or KL Rahul should be opening. Okay, fine. You're going with Prithvi Shaw. Fine, we'll see how it goes. But now when he's the captain, he may want to put his foot down and say, 2 wrongs won't make a right. I want to make a change. So it is actually a tough one for everyone involved. And just last final point, if I were to play a player in place of Prithvi Shaw, I would have played KL Rahul, and I would actually get Shubman Gill in the middle order. There is the middle order slot that's opening up any which way in the second test match. That's where I think he belongs. Whatever little I've seen of Shubman Gill, he has a better technique as compared to a Prithvi Shaw, but somehow something tells me that he is not once again an opener by default. So I'd have him there and KL Rahul as an opener.
All right, you know what? Some viewers, we must apologize. Forgive us for going on and on about Prithvi Shaw. Our conversations have been longer than poor Prithvi Shaw stays at the crease in this test match. But there's an absolutely riveting test to talk about. So let's focus on the action itself and the talking points and the stories from day two. And Tom Moody mentioned it in his opening comments. Tremendous credit to India's fast bowlers. We're wondering if they'd miss an Ishant Sharma in these conditions, Tom, whether Ashwin would do a holding job or have a big impact, which he doesn't tend to early on in overseas tours. He comes with his best returns in Australia after his first day of bowling and significantly impacted that Australia innings. Your thoughts on how the entire Indian bowling contingent went today?
Yeah, I thought it was, superb performance, and R. Ashwin was really the key to it, because he filled the void that Ishant Sharma would normally, or the role that he would normally play, in that he was nearly the Mr. Reliable in the attack. So you could allow the attackers like your Mohammad Shamis and your Bumrahs to come in and play their best role, and that is to target and try to take wickets. Ashwin did the holding role, but he also was clever enough and crafty enough with his changes of pace to take wickets. So it was a win-win situation for Ashwin and also the Indian attack. I thought, to be honest with you, I think it's worth us discussing this pitch and the way it's playing. Clearly, both teams have struggled to bat and play with freedom on this surface. We've heard a number of comments over the first 2 days from various people that have been in and around the contest saying that there's a little bit of a slow tennis ball-y bounce. And from experience, when you have that type of surface, it's very hard to play fluently off the front foot in particularly, and at times getting your timing off the back foot can be challenging. So it is understood that the pitch is going to quicken up a little bit, and if it hasn't done already. So therefore, batting may become a little bit more easier. I'm not saying so much under lights, but sort of outside of that window, it may become a lot easier. But both bowling attacks have bowled exceptionally well and taken full advantage of a surface that seems to be hard to bat with any sort of conviction and fluency.
Yeah, Akash, your thoughts? Umesh Yadav, also important for him to get a couple of wickets to just reinforce that decision to be picked as the third seamer in the absence of Ishant, of course. But the story of the day is R. Ashwin, isn't it?
R. Ashwin, definitely. He is the story because one, he dismissed Steve Smith. Steve Smith doesn't get out against India. So once you dismiss him only for one, that's phenomenal to begin with. Then he takes Travis Head, so one follows the other. And then the debutant Cameron Green. Of course, that wasn't a wicket-taking ball, but that also happens. The rub of the green didn't go with the green. It went with the Ravichandran.
I was wondering this is going to go. That was a very good one.
It had to go some kind. See, Ashwin bowled brilliantly, but we discussed this earlier as well, Ronak, that when you are limited against spin, and that's something that everybody will have to ask and answer and just reflect upon, just go inwards, that are we actually playing spin well? Because this is a surface I can understand. If it's not, it's a tennis ball bounce, the ball is not coming onto the bat nicely and all of that, but it is still day one, day two pitch. Day one, it was all about Nathan Lyon restricting the quality Indian batting against spin. Now Ravichandran Ashwin comes and just spins the web and you don't have a response. So the ability to play spin is also under scrutiny. I am, of course, we've not played on this surface and we are only hearing from people, but the fact still remains that this does not, from the outside, doesn't look like a surface where you can't score against pace, you can't score against spin. It is not a minefield. It's not stopping as much. There is no lateral movement, exaggerated lateral movement. So some batting quality, I think, was also questionable when we talk about the Australian setup today, and some of it, or the intent when it was the Indian team yesterday.
When we talk about R. Ashwin, the spin bowler, Tom, I go back to that point you made on one of our mutinies of sending a spin contingent as well, because spinners take time to get used to bowling in Australia. Ashwin has this baggage of numbers that go against him in Australia, in England. We're now looking at him having multiple tours to Australia. He's played, this is now his 9th test match in Australia. It does make a difference what you see 2 tours later versus what you saw on the first tour.
You'd certainly hope so. From a bowling or a batting perspective, if you taken away learnings from different experiences that your previous tours that you've had and the experiences that you've had on those tours, well, you shouldn't really be on that tour, period. So, yeah, look, I've always thought Ashwin historically in Australia has bowled far too straight. He's bowled very much a subcontinent line, which is attacking the stumps and trying to hit the batsmen on the pads, where in Australia, your line needs to be 6 inches wider than the middle stump. It needs to be coming into off stump. Therefore, you're taking advantage of the bounce, which is the real benefit for spinners, particularly here in Adelaide on this surface. You're getting that extra bit of bounce. And if you're bowling that line that's spinning into off stump, you bring in all your fielders. You're bringing in slip, you're bringing in bat pad on the leg side and silly point if you've got someone in on the offside. When you're bowling straight, you're only really bringing in short leg, if that at all. So, yeah, I thought he bowled beautifully today. I thought Australia played him atrociously, but I don't want to take anything away from Ashwin. He was quality today, and he's the reason India have got the upper hand.
Yep. Fourth tour to Australia for Ashwin, returns with a 4-wicket haul for the second time, and this his best returns down under. So this should bode well for him at the start of what is a long test match series. As far as Australia's batting is concerned, well, perhaps a word of mention to Tim Paine, the batsman. And we tend to only focus on Tim Paine, the captain, or Tim Paine, the keeper. But his batting form's been pretty good, Tom. And again, played a responsible innings, one that keeps Australia even in the game. If they are to dismiss India cheaply tomorrow and not have much to chase, we look back at this innings and say it was perhaps as good an innings as Kohli's in the first.
Yeah, I don't want to compare it to Kohli or anyone. I'll compare it with Tim Paine. And this is the best I've seen Tim Paine bat in Test cricket. But interesting enough, I saw on social media before we came on air a statistic which may surprise a lot of people, but Tim Paine now has the second best Test average for any wicketkeeper batsman for Australia. Obviously, Gilchrist is miles apart. Second is Paine. Behind Paine is Haddon. So, Tim Paine gets a lot of stick for his, potential lack of contribution with the bat, but he is someone that has made and statistically proves that he has made some considerable contributions, none bigger than today.
Yep. Akash, Tim Paine?
Oh, he batted well. There was a need to counter-attack, and he started counter-attacking. When you're batting with the tail, that's the kind of responsibility or role that you have to embrace. And he also told us one thing, that while batting is tough, and we've all admitted that it is tough, it's not easy going. But if you have the intent to go after the bowlers, then there are runs to be scored. You can actually cut the ball. You can perhaps driving might still be tough, but everything is not being pitched fuller. So if you show that kind of intent, then bowlers tend to err as well in line, and they don't just if you don't allow them to sit on one length for a very long period of time. He showed the intent, and he actually bailed Australia out somewhat, because if it wasn't for his innings, Australia were down for all, or rather gone for all money. It's not like a slight advantage or a major advantage. It would have been game over, because you just cannot concede a lead of 150 and then come back into the game with the kind of batting that Australia is possessing at the moment. Openers are struggling. Wade, for the first time in first-class cricket as an opener, donned that, or rather took that role too seriously. Joe Burns can't buy a run. We've discussed that enough. There is a Travis Head who hasn't scored enough runs against India. So when I see this batting lineup, and you look at it very closely, it's Manas Labuschagne, it's about Steve Smith, but the rest actually are not giving you that kind of confidence. So just put that in perspective. Tim Paine's inning was absolutely critical for Australia's survival.
And I like that you make that point, Tom, of how perhaps he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. And I don't know how much of that is media generated or just our own guilty history of knowing Australia's captains are these dominant, imposing, world-beating batsmen. And suddenly, through extraordinary circumstances, the leadership of Australia fell upon the shoulders of Tim Paine. If anything, you'd think that should, in some ways, add to the burden of his batting. It seems to have brought out the best in him. Tells you something about him?
It does, and I think it's partly the captaincy and what we sort of see in our captain. I think it's more to do with, following, what Australia or in any situation wherever a particular player comes up like this, following a legacy like Gilchrist, because the expectation is, well, you should be able to do this or you should be able to do that. It's a bit like, when Shane Warne retired, Australia are in search of another Shane Warne. Well, they come around, players like that come along every 100 years, not, every 5 minutes. And it's the same with India in the sense with Dhoni to a large extent, even though his retirement of international cricket has been truncated. So it hasn't been a sudden cut-off from all formats of the game. But it's very hard to replace players like that. And you will always get the comparisons. So I think, in a way, Payne has had to deal with the legacy of what the expectation of the Australian public is when it comes to a wicketkeeper batsman. Well, Gilchrist throws the numbers out the window.
All right. Now, let's look ahead to tomorrow now. We're trying to figure out, Akash, and I hope today, the end of the day, maybe a batsman comes out to the virtual press conference and actually comes out and says why batting is looking this hard or why the scoring rate has been this slow. Are you expecting the same on day 3? Are we expecting India to play more freely given that they have their noses in front?
I'm expecting a bit more freedom on multiple counts. Of course, you've got the first innings lead. Then you've got Cheteshwar Pujara, who's played one innings now, so he might just be a little more freer in the second innings, and just everyone, because you try and take lessons from the first innings. You now know what are the strokes that are actually you are able to play on this surface, or is the demand of this surface that you can't perhaps drive on the up, but then you can still play a pull or a cut. Try and score runs off the back foot, be a little more aggressive. I'm not saying just be reckless, but you need to show that intent that I want to score runs and not just bide time, because you're not making progress if you're going at only about 2 runs and over. It is not that kind of a pitch. At least it doesn't look like from the outside. It has been the case so far, but it's not been seaming or spinning that much where you feel 2 runs and over is actually par for the course. So I'm expecting slight bit of acceleration from almost every Indian batsman.
We're not getting acceleration in terms of runs, but it's certainly moving at a fast pace, this test match, Tom, as the pink ball tests tend to. 21 wickets in 2 days. Is there already some sort of chat perhaps at the end of day 2? Okay, maybe with a 50-run lead, let's just, even if we get to 230, 240, we're giving Australia 300 to chase, which could be a handful in a day-night test?
I think 300 would be a very good score. What I'd like to see India do tomorrow is particularly that first session and probably an hour after the dinner break is to take the game on because they know that batting is going to be hard once the lights come on. And, to me, they could win the game in that first 3 hours of play. Obviously the first 2 hours, the first session and the hour after the break. And if they sit in the game for too long, all it takes is a double strike, and sitting in the game with very little progress on the scoreboard, you're back to where you started and you let Australia back into the contest. So I think that it's really important they keep the game moving and play with authority and trusting that the surface is going to be a little bit better to bat on. It may come on a bit better, and put Australia under pressure, knowing that they have got to try to defend as much as attack.
All right. Now
there's one dynamic. Just to add one quick point, one dynamic has changed from the first innings to the second innings. That when Virat Kohli was, for example, batting on 49, Australia had a short leg in place. Or he had it maybe 2 or 3 boundaries till that point in time. But now with a cushion of 60, and now Australia with the knowledge that you have to now bat last, they won't be able to attack as often and for as long durations as they were able to in the first innings. A single boundary will actually now force you to think differently. Okay, let's have a sweeper. Let's plug those boundaries, because you just don't want India to also get away with the game, run away with the game. So that actually tilts the balance in favor of India a little bit more, because Pujara will bat the way Pujara does. Kohli would also want to bide his time. But suddenly, if there is, if the pressure is not consistently, relentlessly on you with the field positions as well, it becomes a little easier for those singles to be rotated.
All right. Well, it's been a day of so much that's happened in this test match, but I think we forgot the biggest story of the day, that Jasprit Bumrah has walked out at number 3 in test match cricket as a night watchman to protect Pujara and Kohli and Rahane. And he finishes this day having batted twice, unbeaten on both occasions, and bowled 21 overs and picked up a couple of wickets. Tom Moody, you've been a man of both of many skills. Have you ever managed that?
Yeah, well, I probably have batted twice, but I don't know if I was not out both times. Yeah, look, he's done a great job. He's coming into the Test match in form. He's got a half century under his belt. Yeah, look, it was a no-brainer that India sent in a night watchman, and it's always a challenge for a night watchman in that situation. And now he's, in a way, just given that top order a little bit of breathing space overnight.
Yeah, he seems to have also added to the top order's entertainment, just diffused the tension in the dressing room or the dugout as Pujara and Kohli with their pads on, knowing full well if Bumrah's gone out there, but enjoying it. And it's amazing that what we thought was the most challenging session of play, Akash, pink ball under lights, Prithvi Shaw, top class, top order batsman bowl. Bumrah managed to pretty much middle every one of his defenses of Pat Cummins.
No, he's fantastic. He batted beautifully, but once again, and will not always justify the means. Personally, from a batting point of view, I don't like the idea of a night watchman personally, and an opener never gets one, so you can understand my reservation about it. 10 minutes to go, we need to go out. 10 minutes to go, the number 3 actually gets a night watchman, or the option to get a night watchman. But personally, I don't like that idea, because if it gets out, then you have to walk in any which way. That just puts added pressure. And what is it that you can't do and he can as a proper batsman? So that's where I come from. But I completely get, if somebody wants a night watchman, you always present that option. If they take it, well and good. If they don't, if I were to bat at number 4, number 3, I'll actually go myself.
All right, brilliant. I love it. The opener in Akash Chopra still lives and breathes and has a beating heart till today. But he makes a very valid point. The openers don't get the night watchman. It's only a luxury afforded to number 3 and beyond. Now, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much, Tom Moody and Akash Chopra, for your thoughts at the end of day 2 of this Test match at the Adelaide Oval. It's moving along so quickly, and India seem to be in pole position at the end of it. What will day 3 unfold for us? Join us after the first session of play on ESPN Cricket for Match Day. Viewers in India, don't forget, you can catch up on all the action that you might have missed, or if you want to have a look at it again. It's been a brilliant day for India's bowlers, in particular for our Ashwin Timpane with some fine runs. And who's to say now that there won't be more drama on day 3. So do join us then on ESPN Cricket for Match Day. Until then, bye-bye.